The following program is rated PG-13. Parental supervision is advised.
All right. Let me get my clothes on here and put my pants on. All right. Nobody's naked, right? All right.
Poseidon, the ruler of the seas and all that dwell within them. His rule over the oceans is unquestioned. There are those who serve him with tridents and with infinite knowledge of all things submarine. They are known by many names: coners, weaponeers, the merry men of Sherwood Forest. But by Poseidon himself, they are called the Subvets.
Man battle stations missile for WSRT. Spin up all missiles.
And on July 7th, 1948, something went horribly wrong.
The Cusk had a balloon that was launched, and the rocket sled assembly, it exploded. The missile rolled as it went off the launcher, and it dove down and hit on the after deck of the submarine.
Covered the submarine and with flame and fire.
In front of horrified onlookers, the burning USS Cusk disappeared below the surface. The ships in the area immediately reported that the Cusk had sunk. Fortunately, they were mistaken.
As soon as the skipper realized what had happened, why, he checked to make sure that there was no hull rupture. And since the pressure was still holding, all they had to do was dive, and they had all the water they needed to put out the fire.
Set condition 1SQ for WSRT.
Spin up missiles 3, 6, and 9 for weapon system readiness test.
What the hell are you doing 3, 6, and 9 for?
I have no idea. I'm just making it up as I go.
A little inside baseball here. This is like the 5th take we've done of this opening. And every take it's been spin up all missiles. Now all of a sudden it's 3, 6, and 9. What did you decode the message differently this time, or?
Yeah, that's what I felt like doing this time. I just kind of threw that on there. So, all the other missiles are out of commission. So that's why it's 3, 6, and 9.
Well, why aren't you missile techs? Get off your butts and get those missile tubes in condition.
Do you have any idea how many hydraulic leaks we got back there, James? I mean, I know you're on those fancy Ohio classes, but, everything just worked perfectly.
Right. The beauty of the Tridents is that everything worked just great and dandy.
All the time. You guys just racking it out, watching movies.
It's like those EPM clutches. They always worked perfectly all the time.
I think it ran itself, too. You didn't have to stay and watch us, but once a day, right?
We had, I don't know if you guys had this or not. Yeah, we had the Ships Control Application Program, SCAP.
I remember SCAP.
Okay, now, so the idea of SCAP, for you older guys, you know what we talk. This is for the nubs and the people that aren't qualified. So relax. Don't send me your email saying, Jamie, I know you know. This is for the people who don't know. So it was like autopilot, right? And the idea here was you could program in course, speed, depth, and the ship would just drive itself.
Yeah.
Until the day it doesn't. I'm sitting in Missile Control Center, and you hear the radio on the 7MC, because we got the monitor box in there. Con radio, buoy in 10 feet. Radio con I. Con radio, buoy in 10 feet. Radio con I. Con radio, buoy in 10 feet.
Into feet.
On radio I. Kaboom. Remember that sound you talked about when the Fairwater pipe hit the water?
Yeah.
So instead of being at patrol depth, which is where the Ships Control Application Program thought we was on the surface.
Yeah. So,
and Captain
you heard
Conway,
the buoys smacked it, yeah?
Captain Conway was not happy. He went around the ship after that and taped over every digital depth gauge on the ship, including the one in MCC. And I'm like, sir, why here? I mean, I don't have any control over how deep we are. And Captain Conway, Frank Mark Conway III, later Admiral, looked at me and said, Bowman, do you want to know how deep we are? Occasionally, sir. And he said, then go read the analog gauge. I said, aye, sir. That was it for
so the digital gauges, I mean, on the old Lafayette, I don't know, it's 628, 616, but the swords I know they came off the bottom of the missile compartment forward. And that was the thing, that's sticking out in the water monitor depth. I think I seem to remember the technical term swords. I could be wrong. But
it was a long time ago, man.
Long time ago, yeah. So
long.
So I know I think that was the digital reference, and we had to check it just to make sure it matched up with the analog reference. Or that might be backwards.
I'm embarrassed to say I have no idea where it was.
Yeah, but I remember that was one of our duties, if I remember right, on the grant. The Stimson was a newer class. Don't really remember having to check it on that one.
I used to be able to say I haven't seen my submarine since 1987, but that's no longer true because I did see it in the dry dock down here in Bremerton. So I haven't seen but I haven't been on my submarine since 1987, so I can't remember squat.
Well, I mean, you talk to a guy that sleeps in your rack.
I did do that. That was weird.
I mean, yeah. How often does that happen?
Not very often. Not very often, but yeah, these kids today, man, it's different Navy. Different Navy.
Speaking of getting old, I mean, this whole joints falling apart and surgeries and, steroid shots. I don't know what doctors always, you tell them, you say, hey, doc, when I get steroid shots in the knees, which I need about once a year to 6 months. And it's, I guess like the syringes you would see for, I don't know, like squirting out your ear. Not a real big syringe, but, a fat syringe. They put this milky white substance in there, which is a steroid and some substrate of who knows what else. It might be brake fluid in there for all I know. But, they squirt a lot of it into your knee, not more than you would think. You think just like a regular shot. No, they're putting a bunch of juice in your knee. And that's alarming to begin with. But for me, it causes me a lot of, I would say upset pain. What else does it do but when it kicks in, I mean, it works fantastic. The pain in the knee goes away. I get 6 months to a year, but it makes it 6. I kind of take it to like a pool chemicals. Like if you're down in Florida, if you pool company, you got to maintain your chemicals at a certain thing or things get a whack. You get the fungus in there, algae and stuff. But every time I get one of these things, I suffer for a week.
So is that?
And I'm done complaining now, Dave.
Is that cortisone? Is that cortisone or is it something else?
It might be cortisone. I know it could be. I asked him. I said, "What's?" Because I get steroids on other parts of my body, like in the back and stuff. No problem at all with it. There. Oh, I have migraine headaches. One of the biggest ones. And the doctor's like, I never heard of anybody have complaining like everybody else, they're just good to go. And I'm starting to wonder what do doctors know. I mean, I figure they all practice medicine on, Google now. I mean, I can do that. You go to the hospital, you just see them with those iPads in front of them. Patient says this, and they put in a complaint, and there you go. They just tell them what to do.
Yeah, I just
put steroid. Yeah, put a syringe of milky white substance in their knee. Ignore patient when he complains, especially if his name is former Petty Officer Ryle. Kick him out of the VA. Ran into another submariner, by the way, there.
Yeah.
Von Steuben. I don't know where, but he was, he saw my hat and he says, yeah, I was a submarine, but I was going to try to, wanted to record. He said, hey, do you want to talk about it? And he just didn't seem like he was too talkative after he approached me, and he just on his way out. But, man, I'd like we said before in the last podcast, I'd really like to record some stories, when we can.
You can give us a call, leave us a voicemail or a text at 360-930-9556. And we'd love to hear from you about what you think and maybe set up a time for you to come on and share your sea stories and all that kind of stuff too. I've had so many cortisone shots in my knee. I don't know. And the thing was when I got my first one, it lasted like a year.
Uh-huh.
Then the second one was like 8 months. And then the third one was like 6 months. And then the fourth one was like 3 months. And it just declined.
Yeah, the right knee was the same thing. But,
right.
It declines over time.
Right. So we had to do a triper on my right knee, replace the part, tried an in-place replacement.
So it's like because they're wanting to do a full replacement on mine, but because of the ongoing pandemic and the craziness, that's been put off till who knows when. So I'm going to bother them some more about it. I'm trying to get it done through my wife's work to, use UC Health as well as see if I can get that done. The good people over there at UC Health. I see a doctor over there, and I really like those guys over there. They do a great job. So, well,
that's good. So, how was your holiday and New Year's? Everything went good.
Everything. There was no disasters or craziness. Of a smaller, gathering of family, just a local family here in this area.
That was a small gathering. Wait.
Nobody flew in. No, normally we have for people who don't know, my wife is Peruvian, and we have a Peruvian family, but Peruvians, I'm beginning to think it's all South Americans, but definitely Peruvian. There's a large Peruvian population here in Denver, and when they meet each other, it's just instantly like their blood family. So, what? Well, you saw some of the parties we had over last summer and stuff. The dance and stuff. People just come out of the blow. Out of the what's the word for it? Out of the
thin air.
Dave, I'm at a loss of work.
They come out of thin air.
They're thin air. Then they just come and there's this and the Peruvian people, great people. I mean, I love it. Love the food. I love the climate. It reminds me of when I was growing up in the South, how family used to be. I think it's like a lost thing on the American population for those that grow up as regular old Americans. But there's something to be said about how those people treat each other. And no, it was a great holiday. How about you?
He's talking about this small gathering that he had. I'm watching the video going, holy crap.
Yeah, posting stuff on Facebook, big pictures.
Yeah. My wife works New Year's Eve, so my New Year's Eve was just me sitting here with my son. My son wanted to stay up till midnight. I don't know why, he just did. So we played chess for like 3 hours.
Who won?
Well, I did, of course. You don't think I'm going to let him win. See, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that let your kid win so make them feel good and their self-esteem. Screw that. You want to beat me, bud, you work at it. And that way, when you do finally win, you feel like you've accomplished something. And then I can sign off on your call card, defeated me in chess.
And how's that going to make you feel when it happens?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, being as I'm not a grandmaster, and I make plenty of mistakes, I don't think it'll bother me that much because I do have a pretty smart kid. But But I do like how it frustrates. I kind of enjoy how it frustrates him. He can't.
So you're not going to be defeated.
No, I will not. Yeah. Speaking of submarine news, you ready for World War III?
Absolutely. That's Ukraine thing's been brewing for a while.
So we got that hot spot in Korea. Kim Jong, little guy, says that he fired off a hypersonic missile. Although, from what I hear, it was less hyper or sonic and just sort of a missile.
Kind of like just a bad bottle rocket went awry.
Yeah, I haven't seen all the details on the test, but from what I hear about the test, it did not demonstrate any of the qualities you're looking for in a hypersonic missile.
Now, I think that did get a lot of people's attention over there, though. Like
it always does.
Yeah, Guam and stuff.
What was I watching this morning? I was watching there's a documentary on Prime Video called Regulus, and it talks about the Regulus missile and predecessor, the Loon. And I guess it was Kusk. I think it was Kusk. They were trying to shoot a Loon missile off the deck. See, these guys back then, man, they were crazy. Okay. So they used this rocket sled to push the missile off the deck, right?
Right.
The missile was fine. The rocket sled didn't work. The rocket sled just blew up. They pushed fire and it blew up. Mm-hmm. So the missile, which is full of liquid fuel, spills onto the deck of the submarine.
Sweet.
The whole thing's on fire, right? All the observation ships are having they're oh my God. And as the smoke clears, they realize that the submarine isn't there anymore. And so they start reporting sub sank, right? Well, it turns out that the captain of the submarine, because all captains of submarines are smarter than skimmers anyway.
Oh boy.
realized very quickly that his submarine topside was on fire. So
what do you put fire out with, Dave?
Water. So he did what every submariner would do. He went flood negative to the mark, emergency deep, and took the boat down, put the fire out. But man, just this whole concept of this missile, was it Tennessee? Who was it that launched the first D5? I think it was Tennessee.
It was Tennessee, yeah.
Right,
the
with
D5
that spiral.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't even. Launching 4 C4s regularly was loud enough. I can't even imagine.
There was a big size difference between the C4 and the D5.
Yeah.
And that's what caused that issue. I mean, it was so obviously the Trident was built in mind to, and like all submarines, the first missiles were smaller than, right? So they accommodate newer systems as it goes down. And how many years have we been with Ohio class? 40 years.
But they built those intentionally to handle the D5. They were equipped.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. When they were built for the D5 missile, but they didn't have the D5 missile yet. So they had to use the C4. So we had, if you went on Michigan, where I was, the lower level missile compartment was empty. I mean, it was just a void in there.
Yeah, probably stand up in there. I've never been under it.
They had stuff inside the tube to make it smaller so that the C4 would fit and stuff like that. So yeah, it was designed for the D5 missile, but it didn't have it yet. And it wasn't until Tennessee came along that they finally had it. And I can't imagine the first time you fire one. Yeah, that didn't go well.
So I know the details is I would have, I don't want to say nothing because I'd have to make sure it's not classified, but I do know why that thing spun out of control. And it was an interesting fix to make that not happen again. But it had something to do with how big that missile was. You can figure it out from there, but I'm not going to say what the fix was. But, speaking of that, since we're bringing up rockets and missiles, cool thing to talk about. So we see SpaceX in the news quite a bit. And what's he doing as he's developing Starship and, any of his rockets he's had so far? I mean, he launches those things up when they're in test and he just blows them up and left to right. So, and people, a lot of the other rocket programs out there, like Lockheed Martin, United Space Alliance, these guys give them a lot of grief for that, but they got two different philosophies, and they give them grief. But you talk to the old guys when I was stationed in O2 out there at Cape Canaveral. They talk about the good old days in the 50s and 60s when they were testing all these different rockets. I mean, all kinds of different rockets. So many rockets, I don't even remember the names of all of them. I think Juno was the Army. Juno was a predecessor to our missile systems. That eventually come at FPM and Polaris. But he said there was rockets just flying everywhere on Cape Canaveral. People just ducking and blowing up everywhere. The destruct systems were, they weren't up to par yet. Maybe the first ones didn't even have destruct systems. There wasn't probably as many people living out there on Merritt Island at the time, on the East Coast, thank God, probably take out a few trailer parks, but yeah, so that's how, they were able to innovate so quickly. And then, going into the Apollo program, we were moving. I mean, we went from sending things everywhere, which way and direction, blowing things up, to putting a man on the moon by the end of the 60s. And then everything just stopped. And
it was expensive, man.
It was a lot of reasons. I know the space shuttle was pretty much already a thing with Nixon. I think he was the one that kind of proved this is the direction we're going. I mean, then we can go with my conspiracy stuff, like there's aliens up on the moon and stuff like that. I mean, that's always my thing. But we were told not to come back. But no, growing up in the area, and you would have remembered this. I mean, when you were growing up, Dave's laughing. But when we were growing up, we were going out to space. We were going to Mars. I mean, especially because my dad worked at the NASA at the time, growing up in Central Florida. And every restaurant you went, there was a space theme this and space theme that. It was good times, and we really thought that the Jetsons was going to happen by the year 2000. And all we got was the internet and AOL. And then they give poor old Elon Musk a bunch of grief for blowing his rockets up, innovating. And look what he's doing. So I give Elon Musk A+ for what he's doing. A++. All
right. So you want a conspiracy theory here?
Wait, okay.
When the Jetsons. You thought we were going to have the Jetsons. But when do the Jetsons take place?
Oh man, do you see? It's you with these oolies. See, this would be a good thing when you're on watch. You know, you're like in your fifth hour, 5 hours, and I don't know, 28 minutes in, and somebody asks this question.
Okay, so here's the other question: when does the Flintstones take place?
All right, 60s, late 50s.
No, I don't mean
60s?
that. I mean, when is the show set?
Oh, the actual. Yeah, I was thinking about the year. Okay, now the year.
Jetsons are set when in the future. Right.
2005.
Okay. When is the Flintstones set?
10,000
BC or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
And yet there exists, Eric, an actual show where the two families meet in person.
Of course that happens.
So what if both of them are just living in some post-apocalyptic fantasy world somewhere, because the earth has been destroyed, the skies have been scorched or whatever, Skynet's taken over, so they're just living in these pretend environments to deal with their realities. And the Jetsons futuristic never really will be, because it's just their imagination. And the Flintstones living in 10,000 BC with movie theaters and televisions and radios and all that's just the stuff of mid-watch discussion fodder as well.
And then what if history's been erased multiple times? Maybe, globalists, they start to lose control. There's too many people and they decided to blow everybody up, rewrite history within a span of a couple generations. And you lose 1,000 years, and you call it the Dark Ages.
Okay, so how many of these conversations
charge all this stuff? I got conspiracies all day. But
my question is, how many of these kinds of conversations did you have on the midwatch?
Some of the most twisted conversations you've ever heard.
Steve Brock Brock is a sub vet out in South Carolina, Aiken, South Carolina. He's written a book called Bubbleheads the Book. In fact, I have a copy of it right here.
Yeah, I got a copy of his book too.
That's how there's a whole chapter in his book about mid-watch conversations, Ginger or Marianne.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I've had that conversation. I've stood in Missile Control Center and had that very conversation. I've stood other places and had that very conversation too. But I've had some strange mid-watch conversations, some of which I can't even get into because they were about things that were relevant to us. And you think there's a Victor 3 out there listening?
What's that now?
You think there's a Victor 3 out there listening?
Of course there is.
Then we should be quiet.
Yeah, apologize for my dog barking in the background.
Apologize for my kids running up down the stairs yelling. It's life, man.
Yeah, it's life rolling.
So let's talk some submarine news. You ready?
Yeah, go.
All right. Last week, we had a British frigate, destroyer. I'm not clear on what it was. A British surface ship hit a Russian submarine.
Now, did that happen a while ago, or did that just
recently
happen?
It happened like the 10th. We already had this conversation because this is
right.
Because the
initial articles were confusing. And then I read it and it said, "Oh, it just happened."
They're only confusing because people don't know how to read dates. See, here in America, we put the month, then the day, then the year. Everywhere else in the world puts the day, then the month, then the year. And so that was confusing people. They're like, well, what's happened?
That's what happened.
I'm like, for the love of God. It's like the metric system,
So does that count for finding the submarine, or is that just like lucky fishing? Like you drug a lure and you just... Okay. So you got a dead fish or something.
Do you think it's really an accident?
I don't know.
This is where I get into the conspiracy here. So if a Russian submarine kind of blunders into your path and do you kind of kick it a little bit, or because you're not going to there's no way this guy gets relieved. They don't relieve this guy for a collision like they would, here in America. Oh, you?
Oh no, he's getting a medal.
Right, he's going to get a medal accommodation, all that kind of stuff. He's going to get congratulations and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm just wondering if it was really an accident, kind of like the Baton Rouge and the Russian submarine a few years ago, 92, whenever that was. I'm not convinced that that's really an accident, but that's just my opinion. So I don't know. Who was it? Subbrief. Is that Aaron?
Yeah, it's Aaron.
Says that he thinks it was K335. Said it completed in 80. It was the only Northern Fleet submarine to complete a deployment in 2020. So he thinks that, based on that, he thinks that was her. But I don't know.
Did you see? I mean, we can talk about it, but did you see the other article that says, the NATO and allies are scared because they deployed the black hole, the Russian submarine, the black hole.
That's what they're calling it, the black hole?
Because it makes no sound. It's a black hole.
The story is there's a missing Russian submarine in the Mediterranean.
Right.
But is it missing or is it just hiding? And the reaction seems to be that TASS, the Soviet news agency TASS, is acting like we think it's missing. Whereas when I read the article, it was like they were thumbing their noses at me, you can't find us. Like, well, I don't know about that, but
when Western press picks up on these things, they're always like, NATO's terrified, like we got naval officers out there and Joint Chiefs of Staff out there quaking in their boots, we can't find this boat. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, I'm not sure this works the way they think it works. I'm like, wait. Anyway, the reaction, the news story from TASS is hysterical because it does seem to get that impression. Like, but then there are bits in that story where they're acting like it's. Remember the scene in Hunt for Red October where the Soviet ambassador has to go talk to the defense guy and he's like, "So we've lost a submarine."
Yeah.
And the defense secretary is like, "Oh, okay,
another one."
Do you want us to help you look for it? Yeah, another one. It's a great scene, but it's just, I don't know, man. There's hints in that story that maybe they lost one, and then there's hints in that story which makes me think that's because it's coming from TASS. And for those of you who aren't old enough to remember TASS, basically, if the Soviet news agency TASS reported something, you knew that it wasn't true. You just sort of blew it off and. Soviet news agency TASS reported that 3 Russian cosmonauts landed on the moon last night. Right. No, they didn't.
I find it interesting where, well, I mean, this is going to come up where we're going to talk about the USS San Francisco, but I find it interesting how we approach our news about, some of our submarines in other countries, and they tend to brag. Russia tends to brag a lot, whether any of that's in China. Another one like India, when they commission a submarine, I mean, it's like world party New Year's Eve type stuff when they commission a submarine. When we do stuff, I mean, we release something, but it's pretty quiet. You don't even know where to go to see the commissioning ceremony or the christening ceremony. Somebody, as family with the crew practically. But other nations they approach it, and who knows? What's the reason behind that? It's all propaganda to some point. So
COVID, man, that's why we don't know anything. COVID, you might get COVID if you see a submarine commissioned here.
Right.
Nobody else seems to care. Yeah, it was a sober anniversary talking about the San Francisco. Now, I was not in the Navy when that happened. In fact, I was as I recall, just starting my radio career. We're right about to start my radio career when that happened. And I remember passing news stories. There wasn't a lot of reporting where I was in Central California about it. And so it took weeks, if not months, to find out any information about it at all. But that was not the case for you.
No, it's so I call it Web 2.0 now. The internet's changed a lot since, back in the 90s where we had all the dial up. We talked about this before, AOL, Prodigy, and all that kind of stuff. And so as you got into 2000, this is pre-social media. So 2005, I'm thinking MySpace was around and popular. It's hard to, there's a lot of people that are adults now. They're like, what's MySpace? That was the big thing before Facebook. So social media wasn't really a big thing. So it's funny. I always say how things have gone, what I call web 1.0 to 2.0. And 2.0 for me is because everything's geared to be on a cell phone. And when you see most people walking around, they're on their cell phones constantly. That's how people connect to the internet. And because of social media, it's how they communicate with the internet. It's very rarely do people get and sit down in front of a computer anymore, like we're doing right now. So that's why I call it 2.0. And plus with the social media, it's kind of controlled. So back, when the web internet started getting popular, everybody was anonymous. So everybody had an anonymous name of AOL, and there was message boards out there. People used to visit message boards and stuff. And as people started to get off of AOL, but even on the message boards, everybody was anonymous. So as blogging came along, which is right around the time with the San Fran Acts, and I could be off. It was like a big deal to kind of step out and say, here's the name of my blog, here's my name, and here's where I served, and a little bit about me. And wasn't a lot of submariners doing it. So, and one of the first, and probably the most celebrated blogging submariner that got it all started for us, as far as outside of the official Navy, was Joel Kennedy with "The Stupid Shall Be Punished," and he started just right prior to the accident. And I think I saw his blog, and there was a few others at the time. So we all kind of started around the same time. And me, I kind of started my Drudge Report type style. This was my first attempt at doing media, doing some HTML action sandbox, and I taught myself code so I can build a website similar to the Drudge, but it was nothing but submarine news, and it was called the subreport.com. So we caught wind of this. I can't even remember who caught it first. I don't think I did, but we all pinged off each other relatively pretty quickly. And I remember I had auto CSS feeds, so people's stories and pictures would automatically kind of feed into my blog at the time. So, and I had been talking to somebody at ComSubLand, I think it was, but and I got an email right away. Hey, because after it happened, this was January 9th to happen. And I'm trying to remember how many, it was just a few days, but we got the pictures pretty quick. So digital cameras were still pretty expensive, and the quality of digital cameras wasn't that great. So some of the first pictures that were taken of the accident after they pulled into dry dock, which was, several days later after they pulled in from Guam. I mean, that was a pretty good camera. No, people you were able to take a picture on a cell phone back then, but I mean, very grainy. It was a flip phone, and you take a picture. It wasn't the same. So it's like, who took the pictures of it? It got on the web. All we did was cross post it, and we put it on there. But security got away from us a little bit, and they were right. So we took them down. And of course, all those pictures are out there on the internet. All the ones that the Navy got upset with us are all out there now. But it was really interesting how we all acted like we were professional news press, all the submarine bloggers, who's getting this and who got that. And it was really fun because we're trying to see who could break what first. Somebody knew somebody that was, either a shipmate or somebody on the boat or was on the boat before or had contacts or something. But, so we get little bits and pieces of information in right away. So it's interesting. So the best story I could find, the real story, so the initial stories, which Joel Kennedy had the best ones, and he had the rumor mill. They were off of some message boards, like I was saying before. The two popular ones back then was freerepublic.com and Democratic Underground, which I don't know if either one of them are still around, because nobody really messes with that kind of stuff anymore. Everything's Facebook and Twitter.
I know. Ron Martini out in Sheridan, Wyoming, had what was it?
Oh, called? Yeah, the Ron Martini.
Yeah, what was his called? His was called Submarine BBS. He had a lot of that earlier stuff too. And for the record, Joel's website, the actual blog, is still there. You just got to know where to find it.
Right.
And I'm actually looking at his first couple of San Francisco posts, and with some of this stuff is
chronologically, he kind of throws it down as it was happening over the days. And you'd be, like if that kind of, we had it recently with the USS Connecticut, which Joel Kennedy, I think that's one of his boats, matter of fact, USS Connecticut. But, something like that happened today, somebody's going to be called to task. And I would think they would call you to task even if you was out in the Navy. Kind of the stuff that we did, because things are a lot more tightly controlled because nobody's anonymous anymore. Facebook and Twitter, you have to verify your identification on there and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what Web 1.0 was. It was more free. There was more information out there. Information, I believe, went more freely than now. I think you had to know a little bit more about the internet and how to find information, but there was a lot more information to be had if you're willing to dig for it. And now the web's more controlled and it's harder to dig for information like that. I mean, even the Navy's real type, they rarely release photos of submarines anymore, not like they did back then. Heck, I can find a new submarine photo almost every day. But yeah, if you go to bubbleheads.blogspot.com and click on, I think, December 2004 and go to the very bottom. So you got to scroll to the bottom and you can kind of go chronologically how this all broke down. And then the best account is on navsource.org. Go to the San Francisco's page on there. And there's a guy that was apparently he emailed the story away. He was the diving officer. Doesn't name him, I don't think. And kind of, really gives a play-by-play how it happened. How they went. So they were at flank speed, and they said when they hit, it was during meal hour, is what I said. And when they hit, they went from close to flank speed to 4 knots, just like that. So you remember, you got no reference on a submarine, Dave, as you realize. You got no windows, and so you're in one position 1 second, and you're going in another position just like that.
Velocity to be gained minus 26 knots.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to know what flank speed is on a fast attack. Don't really care. Just but flank's fast, and going to 4 knots that's quick. And there was one death on there, Petty Officer Joseph Ashley. It was MM2. I don't remember if he was a nuke or regular A gang. That doesn't really matter, but to how they only had one death, everybody hitting that forward. I mean, think about, I don't know how they were situated on the Ohio class, because we slept on, swimming cushions in the outboards of the missile compartment. That's all, because you guys were mean. You didn't like us, no 2 guys. But on the old boats, a lot of people slept with their head forward. So think about if you hit something, how many injuries, different injuries, neck injuries, and more people could have died. I don't know. It's crazy.
I've always looked at it as it was a miracle that they survived when I saw the pictures. And I probably didn't see them until, I don't know, February, March of 2005. I was shocked. I mean, I looked at that and went, I don't know how they survived. I really don't. It just looks so bad. And for all the complaining we do about yard work and yard birds, boy, they did that one right, didn't they?
They did it right. A lot of the quick thinking of the chief of watch who got slammed into the ballast control panel hard, broke his arm, and still was able to, he probably saved the ship because he threw the chicken switches and got him to the surface.
Without an order?
Without an order. Yeah. I mean, at that point, are you asking?
No, I'm not either, man. No.
Maybe that's, put into us from sub school, You just hit those babies and blow and go.
Yeah. Boy, if I'm anywhere else, I mean, I'm doing everything I can to get there to throw them, because that's, at some point, that's really your only chance. But with that much devastation, with that much of the forward ship ballast tanks destroyed, and he wouldn't have known that. He would have no way of knowing that.
Right.
So I'm wondering, I wasn't there, obviously. I'm wondering how that thing would have come up kind of stern first. Do they?
Yeah, I don't know how compromised. I know the two of the MBTs were compromised, main ballast tanks. They said they had to use the air compressor, which was marginally working anyways. They had to run it for 30 or 36 hours until they got in with a full pressure blow on it, going all the whole way practically, or a charging blow, I guess it would be. So if it was too compromised, a charging blow wouldn't work, but it was enough to keep them surfaced until they can get some help. And
the testament to the training and the construction of these boats, and it's a testament to, in many ways, we don't talk about this as much as we used to. In many ways, it's a testament to the silence of the silent service.
Right.
That it took a long time for this story to come out. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I got two hats here. One, and I'm not wearing any hats. I realize that if you're watching the video, but one is my submarine hat. I'm a submariner.
Right.
And so I have a certain attitude, belief, thought process here, but I'm also media. And I'm also in dealing with media and dealing with people in a way that I think these stories like this should be told, and they should be told in all of their details, as long as you're not into classified information, because I think people need to know how dangerous this is, because we're getting ready to face a situation. Maybe we'll talk about this here in a little bit. We're going to send our kids, our boys and girls, into harm's way. Mm. And we as a people need to know that the equipment that we're sending them with is top notch. And the way you tell them that it's top notch is you tell them what happened to the San Francisco. You tell them it's driving me nuts the way the Navy has clamped down on the Connecticut. People need to know how well that submarine survived, because we're getting ready to say to our kids, go into harm's way on this equipment with the people of the United States not necessarily knowing how good that equipment is. For God's sakes, we sent submarines to war in World War II for 2 years with torpedoes that didn't work.
Imagine that.
Didn't tell anybody. So I'm kind of mixed feelings about it, Eric. I have the two hats. I understand the unwillingness to talk about it, but at the same time, my other job, my other career, my post-Navy career, I think these are stories that people would want to hear. I really do.
And with the USS San Francisco, it's a good thing, because with the multiple sources, and some of it might be hearsay, but between Joel's blog and that great article on NavSource, it really gives you a good idea of what happened. I'm sure there's some classified stuff that happened, but prior to that, in the Cold War, there was lots of collisions, a lot of monkey business went on, but the Navy kept well controlled of it. You only heard, except for the Baton Rouge, and we had that. What was the boat I was telling you about the last podcast we did with? I met that guy at the VA. He was on a boat that was in a collision.
Oh, yeah. The one that, yeah. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
Tautog.
Escapes me. Maybe we can put it under the story or something.
Isn't it Tautog?
We're fine. Tautog. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Other than, probably USS VI meetings and closed door type meetings like that, where we let things, because we're all submariners, we'll tell stories that normally get documented. The Navy maintained, OPSEC on the submarine force all the way until, the internet came out. Internet's what, caused the problem. So Web 1.0 was a big problem for the Navy to contain, not just for submarines, but the whole military, 'cause things, like I said, was if you really wanted to dig, you could find information, because in the year 2000, that's basically when the big push was like, all right, get all your documentation. We're going all internet based. We proved it works, and everybody started scanning all their documentation and putting it online. So how many mistakes were made? How much reactor information probably got out there by accident, and the Russians probably got it, and now, I would like to think a lot of things are clamped down. We see with the recent politics and everything that's going on in our own country internally. And great show, by the way, Dave Bowman show. That was a good show. You should go listen to that about, Ukraine and, how history kind of repeats itself. But, security.
It does. And that's what worries me. I mean, look, we got all these hot spots in the world right now. Ukraine, Kazakhstan, North Korea, Taiwan, and they all seem disconnected. But there's an underlying theme of opportunity here. And I'm going to say this because it's something that I truly believe, and that is war is an irrational act. It is an act, particularly in the modern era, say since 1900 on. War is an irrational act. It is almost always started by irrational people. And the proof of their irrationality is that they think they can win, and they never do. So if you go through every major war since 1900, 90% plus of the time, the entity, the person and or nation that started the war loses and loses badly. But they go into it with this attitude of the other side is showing weakness, so I'm going to take advantage of that. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait because he doesn't believe that anybody will do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And until he's dangling at the end of a rope, he probably still believed that. Germany twice starts world wars, believing that they can win them quickly and so forth and so on. And then you have, the so on and so forth. It's an irrational act carried out by irrational people. And so it's almost impossible to predict what somebody's going to do. When you look at somebody like Kim Jong-un, what does he see when he looks around right now? He's firing off what he claims are hypersonic missiles, but are they? I don't know. But he thinks that you'll believe him when they say that they are. China has made it very clear that they're going to move on Taiwan. It's just a matter of when. Ukraine, I don't know if you've been following the tweets today. Today, as we record this, is the 12th of December. 12th of January. Let's jump back a month. If you follow the Twitter news out of Ukraine today, out of Europe today, my God, man, it's like Austria-Hungary has issued their ultimatum to Serbia again, and Serbia has told them to blow it out their butts. And that's where we're at. I mean, the ultimatum that Putin gave the West has been rejected. And the West has come back with, I'm not making this up, Eric. They've come back with, let's expand NATO into Lithuania and Latvia. So. And,
the previous administration was charged. We kind of backed out of that, you got all the politics with that. So we just saving face. But, the recurring, I mean, that's probably the biggest. But it's all these people that just can't seem to get along, and they're wielding their people against each other, like you were saying with World War I. And then moving to Denver, and I think you said San Francisco's all the different nationalities are here in Denver. And you get to meet them, and some of them were my former enemies that I was told that would kill me and slash my throat in 2 seconds if they saw me. Turn out to be the nicest people ever. And like I was telling you, we're beginning the show with the Peruvians. I mean, I've met a lot of Russians since I've been here. Hey, Dave, they're just like everybody else. They just want to support a family, raise a family, want to meet good people. But, these governments and these power brokers, and name them whatever you want, they just think, we as countries, we need to go at it with each other for whatever reason.
One of the most surreal experiences of my life, I got out of the Navy in 91. At the close of the first Gulf War, I got out. I have some Gulf War stories I could tell you, but they're not really applicable to this, and they don't have anything to do with submarines. I got out at the end of the Gulf War. 5 years later, I was a Salvation Army Corps officer at a unit in Atlanta, Georgia, just outside on the east side of Atlanta. And the Olympics were going on. It's 1996. And so the Salvation Army has these, what they call mission teams. If you're at all familiar with the church, you know what a mission team is.
Right. So
these mission teams come from all over the world to Atlanta to do whatever it is they're going to do during the Olympics, because I guess they're going to save the world for Jesus at the Olympics. I don't know. Well, one of the teams that we have comes from Russia. And it gets assigned to my unit. My unit is their base.
You're like, oh boy.
It gets even better because my brother actually ends up marrying one of them. So anyway, that's another story for another day and another DIS interview. But one of these kids, and he was a kid, is a Russian submariner. And he and I, it was one of the most surreal episodes of my life. He and I sat in my office for like 4 hours just talking about submarines. And he was much younger than me, obviously. And he was still convinced to that day that, we sank Kursk. And it was our fault. And he was still a little bitter about that.
It'd be interesting to know what kind of information he was getting internally too.
Yeah. But it was a surreal moment for me because here was this kid that 5 years before, if someone had said manned battle stations missile for strategic launch, spin up all missiles or missiles 3, 6, and 9, as a battle stations missile supervisor, I would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Me too.
When the CO said you have permission to fire, I would have pushed denote 1 or denote 3, and we would have been on our way. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't even have thought about it. That's the weird part to me, because it wouldn't even have been a struggle in my mind. It's weird to me now because I look at myself now. I was 24, 25 years old. Now I'm 60. I look at it then and go, well, was I really thinking? But I know that back then I wouldn't even have hesitated. But that's why I was there, is because the Navy knew I wouldn't hesitate. They knew I would have carried out the orders as directed. I don't know that I would do it today. I don't know that I could.
There's no way I'd do it today. But when you're younger, you're not so much politically engaged. You got other things to think about, like talking about crazy stories. Like
but I was politically engaged. I was.
You're weird.
I was vehemently anti-communist and with that, vehemently anti-Russian. But here's this kid sitting in my office, and I'm realizing that, if I'd have had a son with my very first girlfriend when I was just 18 years old, this could be my son. Mm-hmm. And it was a weird experience to me in so many ways, but it was a good experience in realizing that
people are people.
People are people. Mm-hmm. And I, we've said this for years, and that is, submariners are not the enemy. The submarine itself might be the enemy, but the people inside really aren't. They're the competition, but it's hard for me to think of them as enemy.
But how long is it, with the exception of Vietnam and, the recent war too, but the recent war is interesting too, because it shows the change of dynamic I'm getting ready to speak to. But before, the recent ongoing 20-year war we've been involved in with, Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it was a good, what's it been, 55 years since World War II? And back then we talked about this too, World War II vets were not getting over Germans very well. And they didn't get over the Japanese people. We talked about how, if you owned a Japanese car, you'd be hunted down, especially if you're around Detroit. That wasn't a good thing. But that was because of the fighting. So those people, there was hate there, but it's been a long time. And the interesting dynamic with the recent war is we have veterans that have started companies, Black Rifle being one of them. They're employing people from Afghanistan, people they fought side by side, fighting other people from Afghanistan. It'd be the Taliban and stuff. So now like you said, we were talking about, now we have all these power broker political movement to get us engaged in another dumb war that there's no need to get into. And with the connectivity of the internet and the way people can talk to each other so quickly and how information passes off. Because before, when they had a war, like, the bad guys are over there. You need to sign up right now and let's go to war. I think I'd be able to pull that off, if this thing lights off.
Well, and there's a couple of considerations there. Most wars, people believe that they're going to be quick. The Civil War, both sides believed that it would be over within 90 days. World War I, right. Both sides' plans were to be in each other's capitals within 90 days. World War II, I don't know that they had that plan, but I know Hitler believed in the Blitzkrieg and believed in the idea that we could end this very quickly and then negotiate. Japan's whole plan was to establish their defensive perimeter and then negotiate. It would be over quickly. Is war today, particularly war between major powers, not the United States versus Iraq, not USSR versus Afghanistan, not China versus Taiwan, are major superpower to superpower conflicts. Should we be planning for a long war or a short war?
Right. And should we, I mean, I almost look at it as like they're getting each other on. Should we even be kidding about it? No. I mean, because is it going to be, you're seeing how long is, they thought it was going to be a short war and a long war. Well, this could be a very short war because everybody has a nuclear weapon now.
Could be. It could be a very short war, but it could also be a very long war. I mean, consider in very broad terms here, and I'm not going to get anything classified, the nuclear postures of the countries involved here. The United States, our nuclear defense forces are deterrent in nature. We say, again, that they are not first strike. The Chinese have made it very clear throughout most of their history that their entire, I read today they only have 260 warheads total. And their entire posture is retaliatory. In other words, we won't use them unless you use them on us first. Now, who knows what the Russians are thinking? Who knows what Putin is thinking? Who knows what's going through their head? But these are people who are ready to roll tanks through Ukraine over, I mean, how many people actually know why they're willing to do this?
Right.
That's a big question. And I don't think
and I've read off and on that there's a lot of people in Ukraine who wouldn't mind being part of Russia again for whatever reason.
And that's part of the problem, is it? Remember, Ukraine is a weird dynamic. Ukraine, when the Nazis invaded in 1941, welcomed the Nazis. They were excited about the Nazis to get rid of the Russians and the Soviets. Mm-hmm. And when the Soviets came back, they weren't necessarily very happy about it. They were glad to be rid of the Nazis, but it wasn't a good time for them. You've got the whole issue with Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is, boy, what a mess that place is. And yet there's so much Soviet, and I'm sorry, I keep saying Soviet, but Russian.
These are all former satellite countries of the Soviet Union.
Kazakhstan was the last Soviet republic to break away in 91. They were the last one to do it. And to this day, there's a belief that they shouldn't have done it because Kazakhstan is traditionally part of Russia. Traditionally, much like Crimea is traditionally part of Russia. But Kazakhstan is the source of Soviet uranium. It's also where their space program is located. The entire Soviet space program
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Located in Kazakhstan. It's like Kazakhstan might be its own independent country, but it's kind of like, for us, it's kind of like Puerto Rico and Guam. They're territories. I mean,
right.
Yeah, they're American citizens and all that. They're independent, but when they need to be, they're right back at the door going, hey, we're part of you. Kazakhstan, much the same way. And they've already sent the troops into Kazakhstan, and they're just waiting for the provocation on Ukraine, which is ostensibly is about NATO. Russia doesn't want Ukraine joining NATO, because this would be a direct threat to their security. Again, irrational people say irrational things and start irrational wars. NATO's never started a war that I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. So why would Russia think that they're going to? It's more about Russian hegemony and controlling energy to the western part of Europe. And then you got the Germans involved, because the Germans want the energy and they're willing to dance with the devil Putin to get it. But you got the other countries that are like, hey, wait a minute, those are bad people. They do bad things. Why are you sucking up?
Tons and tons of variables. Meanwhile, like you're saying, we just got a bunch of young men out there on some of the best equipment, I believe, and young women, out on our submarines. And you're cut off, except for message traffic, which has been screened whether it goes out to you. You can remember that. We never knew the news. I think they could have lied to us about the sports scores for you sports fans out there. And anyway, who won the Super Bowl? It could have done that if they wanted to, because it wasn't like you're getting magazines and newspapers off of your local 7-Eleven underwater or anything. But got a lot of people just out there blind, and they're just doing their job, what they were highly trained to do. And like we said, when we pushed a button, absolutely, because that's what we were trained to do. That's what we were screened to do, and that's what is expected. And that's the same posture I would assume the submarine force has today.
I would assume so. And of course, now we have the added element of SSGNs on top of that. And first strike capabilities for non-nuclear first strike capability. I mean, there's so many variables and so many things going on here, so many moving parts. I mean, you think about the war in Ukraine, what's the submarine fleet going to do?
Right.
Well, there's a lot of submarine fleet can do, particularly our submarine fleet. I don't know if Australia's submarine fleet could be, or Canada's, but ours could certainly be a big part of that.
And I mean, I really like that whole SSGN. I mean, I was pro from the start. When you think about all the Tomahawk cruise missiles you put on an Ohio class submarine as 7 Tomahawks per missile tube, that's a lot of whoop ass going out there for somebody. One boat can give somebody a really bad day. Heck, it can give a small country a bad day.
When back in the day when Kim Jong-un was rattling his saber and making all his comments about what he was going to do, and USS Michigan, my beloved USS Michigan, which is no longer the SSBN that it was when I was there, pops up in Busan, pulls into Busan. And at the time, I remember thinking to myself, and I actually said this on the air on the radio, was USS Michigan versus North Korea. Who you got?
Yeah.
I'm taking Michigan.
Just one boat. We're good. We got this. Not a problem.
That's all we need. Just that one.
Don't need anything else. No backup. We got this. No problem.
But at the same time, I don't want to lose track of the fact that this is very dangerous. It's a deadly game, folks. Mm-hmm. And here's the part that nobody wants to hear.
Yeah.
If this thing devolves into a war, we're going to lose people.
Yeah.
And we're going to lose people in a way that we haven't seen in a long time, not since World War II.
I mean, what is the total number of people we've lost in the 20-year mess we've been into? You know that number right offhand?
Offhand, no, but I know it's less than 10,000.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, 5,000 to 10,000.
Keep in mind that in 30 minutes at the Battle of Cold Harbor, 10,000 dead on the Union side. That's the Battle of Verdun, 1.6 million people dead, gone. Most of them never found. They just got their bodies just ground into the dirt. The Flanders, the same thing. World War II, we had how many men die on Omaha Beach in just a few hours?
Are people are they ready to handle that? I mean, it seems like a lot of people just go mindlessly day by day. You see them walking around with just their cell phones in their face. I mean, we're lucky more people don't get killed just walking out in the street because they don't even look up anymore.
As a society, no, we're not ready for this.
I don't think we're ready for that kind of loss.
But here's what's going to happen, Eric. Now, this is Dave's prediction. It may not happen, but this is what I see happening, which is that they have to, like in World War I with Lord Kitchener and your country needs you and Uncle Sam wants you.
Right.
There's going to have to be a great patriotic drive to get the American people, and you'll see it on the news, you'll see it in the newspapers, you'll see this whole thing about how Russia, presumably, since they'll be the opponent,
right,
is evil, and how we have to stand up for democracy, and how we have to stand up for security and safety and against tyranny and all those kinds of things. But remember, all of that will happen when it's already been decided that we're going to go to war. Right now, today, that hasn't been clearly decided yet. And so you're not seeing that yet. And so
for those of you who think we're joking about how serious things are, I saw just before we came on the show today a Twitter feed from the Army. They're offering $50,000 sign-on bonuses for a 6-year commitment. So, I mean, they say, there's a certain qualification, obviously, but still, I mean.
Would you go back if the Navy called you and said, hey, I need a missile tech?
Not this time. I can't. I just can't. But because I'm older, wiser, not as wise as the old powerful Dave Bowman here, but I mean, I'm wiser, and I know the games, the local politics, national politics, and world stage politics. It's just, you of course, you based on what side you want to play and what you read, you pick sides, obviously, but it's so confusing. You don't know who to believe. And I'm not willing to tell my children, hey, you need to join up right now, get that $50,000 or $100,000 and go against Russia, or go against China, or whoever the bad guy is. And plus, with the media since the last election, I mean, I saw something about CNN's like 90% of their what do you call it? Their followership, their people watch them, I mean, gone. So even if war happens, who are they going to go out to and say, hey, we got to go against Russia right now? Who are they going to talk to? Nobody pays attention to even. Well, I definitely know CNN and MSNBC and Fox News numbers is not even where it used to be. So how are they going to get that information out there that there's bad guys and we got to go get the boogeyman?
You scare people, you get them involved. Wasn't it this day? I think this was the day, January 12th, 1991, when Congress voted on the authorization for use of military force in Iraq. Iraq. Mm-hmm. And that day stands out in my mind. You know why? Because I happened to be in Washington, D.C. that day.
I happened to be on patrol.
I wasn't. I was stationed at Dam Neck as an instructor, but for reasons that I'm not going to go into here, my first wife, I was in Washington, D.C. that day. And I was near the Capitol listening to it on the radio. So, yeah, they will generate that interest as they need to. The playbook's been done. There's no mystery here as to how you get people fired up for this. The question is whether or not, if you don't think it's logical now, and maybe you do, maybe you think we need to go to war for Ukraine right now, and that's fine. If you think that, I don't happen to agree, but if you think that, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with it. But if you don't think it's logical now, what's going to change when the tanks roll across the border into Ukraine?
Is it going to change with years and years of classified weapon systems on all sides that will get involved? Have not even, because you wait till the last minute before you break out the good stuff. And what's that going to be? We saw during the Persian Gulf War One, the amount of because we didn't even know we had that precision where we can put a missile right down a 10-inch pipe and got up a building. It was amazing. We were watching it live on CNN. We're like, this is crazy technology. That was 30 years ago. Think of what we got now.
We all knew we had Patriot missiles, but we didn't know what they did.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's what those things do.
Are you willing to see new technology you ever seen before? And you're willing to see a lot of people disappear really quickly because of it.
Yep. And that's what's going to happen. And that's what scares me. Anyway, I don't want to get too depressing. So that's what we're going to
maybe this show needs it, because normally we're kind of jovial and joking around, but hey, I think it's a good cap talking about, we've talked about USS Connecticut since it happened. Talking about that, and San Francisco is just a good thing because there's more information about it and the survivability of the silent service over the years. And, what a heritage we've had 100 plus years on now. And I think the silent service will be ready as it's always been ready, and they're going to do their part. But that means
rather not do it.
Rather not do it, because I don't think we want to go that route. But I believe in our Navy, and I believe in our boys out there, and I believe in our NATO allies too. Just don't know a lot of. I know I got Russians and stuff on the Facebook group, but it's just, other than some of the people I do talk to a little bit, I don't know. And to do that, because of the internet and the way everybody talks, do they really want to go to it? The people I'm talking about, the sailors. Do they really want to go to war?
That would be interesting to hear from some of you folks on the Facebook page that are not American. Right. Well, how are you reading this? What are you seeing? Because I'm on
the other side. Yeah. Yes, please go on the Facebook group, and maybe we'll post a show and it'll be pinned to the top. Yeah. Go, everybody on both sides, just, you don't have to say any particulars about what your Navy's doing. Just saying, how do you feel about going to war with all these different sides? Do you really think it's your war?
Yeah.
To be fought? So. Good stuff.
Those are the interesting things. One last thing I want to drop. I don't know if you follow the page. If you don't follow the page, The Subvet, facebook.com/groups/The Subvet. You should be following it. And if you do, you saw a posting there a couple of days ago from Dan Gibson, who goes by the name Dang Ibsen.
Yeah, I like that.
for a while. He has written a book called Spook Writer. It's a fiction book, and it is available on sale right now on Amazon Prime. So he's member of the group there. So if you want to support Dan, then yeah. And you know how I figured out because I couldn't figure out for months, I couldn't figure out this Dang Ibsen thing. And then I saw his book, and his book is by Dan Gibson. And I went, you son of a holy
I kind of figured that's what it was, but I didn't know.
Moved the letter over, and it's kind of funny.
I said, well, that would make sense. It was Dan Gibson. So
anyway, if you want to support him, it's not an expensive book, even if you have to pay for the whole thing.
Right.
It's available on Kindle, and if you have Amazon, what is it? At Kindle Unlimited, it's free. But if you don't, fork over a couple bucks and read it.
Yeah,
Let
we
us know
talked
what
about the Bubbleheads book too.
Yep.
You can get that one. So
you get. I would like to, if you're a submarine writer, drop us an email. My email is dolphindave@slipperyfish.com.
Mine's eric@thesubbed.com.
Or you can. What?
I was going to say, not only drop us a line, let's get you on the show.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
We want to get some people on here. Yeah.
Yeah. Drop me a voicemail, 360-930-9556, or an email. Let's get you on the show. Let's talk about your book. Let's promote it. Let's get you some sales. If you have any comments about today's show, please call that number again. Can you say it, Dave?
Oh,
you had to ask me that, didn't you? I just 360-930-9556.
You can leave your comments on that line. I think it gives you a good
3 minutes to
3 minutes to kind of talk about what you want to say. And hey, leave us a comment. And we might use it on the next show, or we might use them for like recaps if we get enough of them. And I think that would be fun too.
As a professional radio guy, I can tell you, if you can't say what you got to say in 3 minutes, you didn't really think about what.
3 minutes is longer than you think it is.
And if you have to, call back. If you got to keep going, you can just keep calling back, leave a message, say, hey, this is part 2 of the message.
So, all right, Dave.
All right, man.
Very good.
Secure from battle station's missile. Set condition 2SQ.
And hopefully we don't have to do 1SQ. Anyways, I hope you have a good rest of the week, Dave. So,
and you as well.
We'll see you. See you next week.